Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by, let's see, Neil, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man, Righteous Force, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Let's get it on.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you all. Please share the show, as I said in the intro. We're going to be covering an old Flat Earth debate today, so if you're a member, you can check this out after the recording ends and I publish it to members, which will be today, after the live stream ends, obviously. You can see the preamble or build up to this, which is a bit weird because we're kind of critiquing our own stuff from many years ago, which is fine. But a very early Flat Earth debate show, so it's Flat Earth Debate 197, I believe. And as I say, the sort of build up to the discussion that we're about to cover is in the pre-show. Now we're at the point where the flatties, that would be Arwin and Anthony, along with a little bit of, I've forgotten his name now, Nummy, I think he was called. They've all had their sort of pre-discussion, and now we've got the baller, which is Brenda, entering the fray, and we don't actually know what's going to happen next. My memory doesn't serve me for what happened yesterday, so after the chance to me remembering how this conversation went, pretty much zero. But nevertheless, this has been picked out by John, or Refracted Curvature, as I'd say. So do you want to give us a little preamble, like 10th would normally do, John, in terms of why you've picked this for us to cover today?
Well, we've been talking about gravity a lot, and we have the Ethereum faction, the Upward Rising Earth, and then the ballers. This is how gravity gets worked into a conversation, and it's some of the tricks that are used to get it as a presupposition within the conversation. I thought it was a pretty good example of them.
Okay. Well, may as well ask the housekeeping questions to sort of, I don't know, offer something in housekeeping that goes along with the subject matter. So, any scientific evidence of gravity? No go at once.
Are you saying, are you looking for an evidence of gravity? My name is Matt.
Any scientific evidence?
Right. So if not gravity, then how do we explain the increasing pressure of the depth of water? I mean, that seems like a pretty solid form of gravity, right?
You tell me.
You
tell me that you're saying that, number one, is this scientific evidence of gravity?
Yeah, so I would think that I don't know. Gravity sounds like a pretty good way to explain it. You got the water above the water. Let's say you have 100-foot depth of water. At 10 foot, we can measure 10 foot pushing down on it. But also the width, the side pressure is kind of equal. The side pressure is going to be the same, but if you start to get deeper and deeper and deeper, then the all-around surface pressure becomes, equal to the pressure of the water, right? Like that's what I've gone to really deep waters and just dove deep, and the pressure definitely is pushing on me.
Okay.
Is that
I heard.
Is there any other force that can explain that?
Well, that's pressure. You said it about 6 times.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but the pressure would be due to the weight of the water. Is that not?
Hold on.
Do you think about that part?
Because it's
when you
It's in all
hold on
directions.
one
You
second.
just described it
Hold
as
on, this
pushing
guy's, hold
in
on
on
one
you.
second, John. Just because you're new, how do you say your
Correct.
name first of all? Hello.
Oh no, I'll get off of there.
How do you say your name?
Sorry, I'm having some phone clicky problems. All right, I should be able to talk.
What's your name?
My name is Matthew.
Matthew. Sorry, you did say. When someone's replying
Yes,
to you,
sir.
if you can just pop yourself on mute, just so we don't get audio feedback, that'd be wonderful. Just go ahead, John. Refractive curvature.
Okay.
Thank you, Matthew.
Right.
Let me
You
get in
already
there and do that, okay?
stated that the pressure
Hold
is
on,
pushing
John.
in
Hold
from
on.
all directions.
We've got 3 seconds into you responding, and immediately we've got audio feedback because he hasn't popped himself on mute yet. Can you pop yourself on mute so that we can actually hear the response to your water stuff? Thanks. Go ahead. Refractive curvature. Third time's a charm.
You already said that the pressure is pushing in all directions as you go down in the water. So it's not down. It is pushing in on you from all directions, not just down. So why would you think it's just down?
Oh yeah, okay. That's a good way to put it. So the water is staying at a level. There's a level where we can say that's the surface of the water. So the water there has gone down as far as that water can. It can't go any further below if there's water below it. So that water that's below it should only have the force of the water that's above it acting on it. That is the part that's, literally blowing down. And because it's a fluid, you're definitely experiencing the pressure from all directions because of what I consider would be the weight of, the cubic feet of water that are above it. I don't know. We're just talking about gravity, so that's kind of where I started.
No,
with
we're not. We're talking about pressure.
Now.
We're not. You just, at the end of your discussion about pressure and water and what it does, you've said, and now we're talking about gravity. No, we're not. At no point did you mention gravity in your description of the water pressure. It isn't gravity. But we're asking for scientific evidence thereof. I mean, obviously that isn't it. That's just a description of pressure that you've given. But is there any scientific evidence of gravity?
Yes, sir. So I'm attributing the cause of the pressure to gravity.
Yeah, I realise.
So
I realise, my friend, you
Okay.
appreciate that science deals with cause and effect. You appreciate that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So what you are doing is arbitrarily ascribing gravity to this effect you're describing with water and its pressure. Yeah, with science, you don't arbitrarily ascribe effects with things like gravity, which doesn't exist. You establish cause and effect through experimentation. Hence me asking for scientific evidence. So when you just tell me about your arbitrarily ascribing gravity to the descriptions you gave, that's not scientific evidence, is it?
Yeah, you make a good point there. And I think a big part of the reason I came to this and that I've been listening to you guys is because there may be like a leap. There's a distance between the principles that I'm using to explain everything and the effects that we're getting.
Okay. What effects?
Water seems to sit on a level.
What effects?
What
We
effects?
know that part. So I'm just gonna withdraw. But
what effects are you talking about? Because that's what science is interested in, specifically in effects.
Yeah.
And their causes. That's why we ask for scientific evidence of gravity.
Effect that keeps the water from being above the boat. So there's a reason that the water is on a level and it's below something else. If that's not gravity, or some sort of bias, right? Because that's what we keep going back to. I've heard the word downward bias several times. I never really knew what we were getting to with that, besides maybe an alternate explanation of the phenomenon that we've been all taught, that is gravity, where things are down. If nothing is resisting it, it's going to go down. So we have a flat level of water, and then upon that, if we disrupt that, we get, Bernoulli's principle and floating, because the water wants to be the lowest thing versus these two things. The boat should be above me, the water needs to be below me. We can observe that, And if you continue to go down deeper in the water, yeah, we get pressure. But
Can I point something out to you about what you just said that's a bit confusing?
is just the fact that this is the go ahead.
Well, first of all, gravity is not a force in the rhetoric of heliocentrism. It hasn't been in over 100 years. But further to that, invoking sea level as a horizontal plane, where you said flat, the water's flat. Where do you get center of mass for that in what your description of a force would be?
Center of mass. This is the force. Maybe I'm not seeing exactly what you're saying there. You're asking me. There's definitely
Gravity is
matter above
massive.
it. So the mass of the water. Yeah, go ahead. Wait.
Right. Gravity, and when it's described as a force, is mass attracts mass, correct?
Yeah, that's definitely it.
Okay,
That's the
so
formula.
the center of
Right.
one mass is drawn to the center of another mass, but you just described how the water is flat and level. Where do you get a center of mass to justify that statement?
Oh. Okay.
There is an answer. It's not rhetorical.
No, I got that. That was just a different question that I was looking for, sir. So the center, I'm just saying, is going to be, as far as my perspective as a person being here, because I really can't do any much more than where I'm standing, but my perspective is obviously a perpendicular line straight to the matter below that water, or the matter that I'm standing on, because being that it touches the horizon on all sides, that matter is significantly more matter than everything else that's sitting on top of it. So I understand that at some point there's a center of mass there. The concept of the perfect ball, and that if that perpendicular line was always perpendicular to the circumference line of that ball, then we would experience the same thing as if it was flat. Like I might be flat. I may just see it on flat because it's going to look the same from my eyeballs if I'm standing on that and only able to see parallel to the surface or perpendicular straight up. If I was on yonder ball, from my perspective, they're going to look the same. So I say the understood center of mass is just what I'm standing on. And I know it's kind of that may seem like kind of a dodge, but it's really not. If the water is there present in front of me, it's trying to get low. The lowest it can get is all of
Sorry,
it being where it
I've
is
got to
and
stop
being
you
flat.
before you launch into this for a third time.
Okay.
Sorry. He's asking you, you've just rephrased it slightly to perpendicular. Okay. But you said perpendicular to the ball. How'd you get that? Is his question. Maybe you want to repeat your question again, John. Or refractive curvature.
Right. You have invoked a center of mass, drawing things to it, right? Mass, the center of one mass being drawn to the center of another mass. But then you've used parallel, perpendicular. You've described only flat planes. You have not described a sphere to be drawn to the center of. You see the problem?
That's true. Yep, I haven't done any of those things because the perspective that I live at is a big old flat world, and I know that gravity, if written as the equation is, can't be that way here, because otherwise at the North Pole we'd have much more of a gravitational pull than we would at the South Pole if that was all the mass that we're looking at, right?
I've got to stop you. I'm really sorry. Before we move up to the North Pole, I said earlier, I did interject and say the question wasn't rhetorical. Now, you've semi-answered it in the way you've said, well, we have to accept that we've got parallel and perpendicular. But you were asked where you get your centre of mass from. Well, that's still a question on the table. It wasn't rhetorical. You have actually answered it, maybe unbeknownst to you, where you got it from within your answer already, but maybe you just don't appreciate where you're got those concepts to apply to then infer that there's going to be a gravitational pull at the top of the North Pole. You need to actually get that from somewhere first. Do you understand his question? It's still on the table for you to answer.
Okay. Geez, I'm not trying to be dodgy. So let's say his question, your question, sir, directly was, where is the center of mass that's causing, let's say, the ocean to stay where it is? Is that the question?
No. Given that you have described all of your descriptions of the Earth with perpendicular, parallel, flat plane, you have done that, not me. You. Where are you getting a center of mass to have the center of mass draw in the center of mass? I can tell you if you need me to.
It's an excellent question.
I really want to steal John's thunder. I'm having to hold myself back from doing so no one else is going to be doing it either, Neil. Just let John hold the mic and ask his questions. Go ahead, Matthew. Did you hear the last question, or do you need it repeating?
Yeah, it was right there. And then we had a little bit of chatty, right? We're okay. Yeah, I'm presuming that there's more mass than I can really wrap a ruler around that is supposed to be right below me. And I really feel like the perspective of the place that I'm looking at and I've always been on seems pretty flat. But so
that's the answer.
That's it. That's the mass.
Yes, that's it. That's it. Correct answer. Do you want to just affirm his answer, John? Refracted curvature. That's correct. That was the correct answer, same as the first time you gave it. Go ahead, John.
Right. This idea is built from, I'm echoing a little bit, sorry. The idea is built from the equatorial plane, right? So there is no center of mass. It is only a concept. So you built a force on a concept of a flat plane. And that's the problem. You don't have a center of mass. There's no such animal within this description. So when you describe it as a force of mass attracting mass, you're no longer talking about reality.
Yeah, so that's pretty wild. I mean, it's quite a diversion from whatever you guys might have been about to talk about, because I know you had a whole thing planned a minute ago.
On the contrary.
But see, that's a good point.
Not at all. That was precisely what was discussed in the pre-show before the live show started. So the revelation that we typically discuss recently is that all roads lead to a flat Earth, as we would describe it. Well, the gentleman you were speaking to earlier, refracted curvature, John, was detailing exactly this with respect to gravity, and how gravity also uses a flat plane to derive those concepts of now out of date by 107 years, mass attracting mass in Newtonian form, or the new hotness of Einsteinian, the uneven distribution of mass causing the bending and warping of space-time. Either way, we were discussing the requirement for a flat plane in the former instance in the pre-show. So no, that was where we were going. The video that we're going to cover is discussing some of the older ideas of gravitation. We just haven't got there yet. But I'm very pleased that you piped up, Matthew. Thank you very much.
May I ask Matthew, or give a comment to Matthew?
If John's done,
because
I'm pretty sure he is, unless he wants to give a summary.
You done?
Yeah, I'm still over here. I'm trying to switch from my phone over to a computer, though. But you're welcome to ask. I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. You know what I observed is you seeking an answer to a good question. And I saw a battle happening in your mind of what theoretical knowledge has been imposed on us since birth about gravity versus your own experience empirically. You were describing empirical experience, perpendicular, flat, all these things, but it was battling with the infusion of this false gravity that's been infused in us since birth. And it was interesting to see you go through that once John asked you good questions.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, man. That's fun to do. And I think we got to let ourselves kind of fight with this stuff to get anywhere with it. and that's with a lot of different types of discussions. If you're basing your argument, like you said something really good earlier, Nate. If I base my argument on something that I've read rather than experienced, then I'm not going to get anywhere because I am kind of parroting it. But if I say, hey, I was out on this lake, damned if it looked pretty flat, and I've driven past the coast, that's kind of what I've got to work with, and I've been in a plane before, describe back from there. Like, let's work back from there rather than pretending, because I'm not dumb. Definitely know all these physics equations, and they're observable to a point where you can get down with some experiments. But I agree that the whole problem with this gravitational field, or however they're trying to describe it now, because I think when I was a kid, we've still read that it was a field that permeates all things, all ways, as long as it's consistent of matter. That's kind of what I've seen so far, right? That's what they've. But Tim, did you just say that they've changed the definition of it?
Yeah, about 107 years ago.
Lord of mercy. Okay. Well,
What level?
Thanks for having me.
Without being rude, what level were you educated to?
Oh, I got 2 senior years of high school, and then I got 2 years of computer programmer and another 2 years of community college.
Was the community college scientific in nature?
No, I was trying to be a tutor for the degree I just got.
Okay, so as far as you are concerned, gravity is a force, correct? Just yes.
Yeah.
Most people would just answer yes because most people are taught throughout their earlier years in education that is the case right up until they graduate. Now, if you go into...
If I were to say gravity, we look at 2 pieces of mass, and there is work done on them because they're supposed to be moving towards each other.
Is that so?
The lock of centripetal work in an orbit is a loss, right?
Yes, a yes would have sufficed. You are under the impression that mass attracts mass and that it is a force of mass attracting mass, yes. A yes would have sufficed.
Yes, sir.
Yes. 107 years ago, that was overturned, superseded, replaced, whatever word you want to use, by Einstein. Now, gravity, to quote George Musa, Scientific American editor, gravity is not a force. Maybe another one. Brian Cox. There isn't really a force of gravity at all. Now, in higher education, they teach you that, no, it's not a force. Mass does not attract mass. It's absurd. Now, when we ask for scientific evidence, the starting point would be to observe a natural phenomena. So obviously your interjection was to say, oh, well, mass does attract mass, right? Could you example that naturally occurring? The answer is no. It doesn't occur. Mass does not attract mass. Now, because the foundation of heliocentrism is built on this principle that we must have a force holding us to a spinning water ball, they have not relinquished this and instead continue to perpetuate that lie to school children, right up until higher education, where they tell them that actually no, the uneven distribution of mass causes time, as a dimension invented by a man named Einstein, to bend. So fourth dimensional pseudo space-time bending, that's pseudo-Riemannian space-time invented by Einstein, that's the current gravity and has been for 107 years.
I'm trying to look up these people's names while you're talking. That's some dynamite. Jeez.
Not really. It's been the case for 107 years. They just lie to children. Ever since it's been the case, they haven't altered the education system. Certain members of this particular fraternity, if you want to call it that, flat earth debate, are approaching people at a governmental level to address that problem. The fact that children are quite literally lied to, only to be told, no, that isn't true when they get to higher education. No, bending space-time is as a result of the uneven distribution of mass according to Einstein. That is gravity now, not a force, explicitly detailed by professors of pseudoscience as not being a force. So that's the end of that for 107 years. it needs to be there. It's a pillar. It's a foundation of heliocentrism. You must have a force holding you to the spinning water ball. That's why it's still taught. You can't just get rid of the force, even though it isn't one anymore. Otherwise, the entire kit and caboodle collapses for the general public, who think that they're only held to a spinning water ball, not flying off it into space, because of the force of gravity, which it isn't a force. Absurd, but both run concurrently because one is foundational, that would be Newtonian forces of gravity. The other, conceptual and fourth dimensional, Einsteinian, works with the realms of the current mathematics of space that they just explain with bullshit. So you need both, even though one is a force and one isn't. Anyway.
Well, the gravity that is a force, since it is built on use of a flat plane and the calculations thereof, a flat plane, that corresponds to reality in that much, in that much. There's no force being described, right? But because it uses a flat plane, you can get ideas like parallel, perpendicular, up and down from it, and semi-apply it to reality. So it's part of the way we've been tricked. And once you're completely in the paradigm of the Earth flying around the sun and the sun flying around in the galaxy, then you can be introduced to Einsteinian mechanics because you're already there.
May I offer Matthew a contrasting story that will show him exactly what's been going on once you're done?
I don't see why not. Can you mute, please, Matthew? Just causing some...
Sounds like we got time for it.
Yeah, indeed.
All right. So when you look at the horizon, Matthew, I need you to work with me back and forth here, so be ready to answer. When you look at the horizon and the clouds seem to be touching the surface of the sea, do you actually think they are, or do you think that's an issue of perspective?
Oh, I would say that's an issue of perspective. Yep.
Right, great. So let's go back a few centuries when everyone knew the Earth was flat, and they would not wander off the coast because they needed land in sight, because they thought if they went too far, they could fall off over the edge, supposedly, as they tell us. Whether true or not, let's just go with it. All right. So then when ships and navigators would go and they wouldn't fall off because of a thought placed in their head that we're a globe, that's where that whole thing began. It's like, well, if we go that far, we're going to fall off, so let's not go that far. But then when someone did go that far and they didn't fall off, the thought that was planted in their head is that they're on a circle or a globe and they're not going to fall off. And then, of course, gravity had to be invented and everything else. In reality, it's over a plane and everything shrinks the further it goes out and it seems to touch. But since you've answered correctly, the telephone poles do not get shorter in the distance, nor the clouds touch the sea. As you go to it, they get higher in the sky, like Polaris. If you're going towards Polaris, it's going to get higher and higher in the sky. If you're going away from Polaris, it's going to get lower and lower to the horizon. That all takes a flat plane. It's obvious. But because they want to make everyone think they live on a globe, this thought was planted in their head. So the contrast is the thought of gravity, now to your question, was planted into your head. But the way you described it was described on a flat Earth with a flat plane, perpendicular. You see how the trick is done?
Yeah, I see what you mean there. So there's 2 points. You got gatekeeping, which has been a trait of kings for as long as they've been there, like trying to keep something secret for themselves because if they don't know where the spices come from, I still run the game. And the second point, that we do have an observable, what is it, 9.2 like meters per second squared? I remember that from school, something like that. So we have that velocity, but that's great. I appreciate that part. Can I skip to something else though and say how do they?
Well, before you do,
okay.
Before I let you go,
well, before you carry on, can you please?
If you got something to complete this.
Please, can you pop yourself on mute when someone's talking to you? Because you've got a horrendous buzzing sound that's making its way through. Matthew, thanks.
All right, I've got a mute button, and I'm keeping myself mute anytime I'm not talking.
Sorry, I mean, in Discord. Can you pop yourself in mute on Discord? Because it's whatever you're doing is causing a huge buzzing sound to come through for everyone else in Discord when you're not talking. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Tenth.
Yeah, see, now you brought 9.8 meters squared. Okay, see, again, another thing that's we observe empirically, things fall that heavier than the medium it's in, obviously, but things go up too. So there's just no force because things go up, avoiding this force, like clouds and steam and helium balloons. So the whole point is when they put your mind and they own it, thoughts in your mind, and you start thinking within that system, then that's where the trick is done. Whereas when you just say empirically what I experience, what am I experiencing? Water finds its level at rest. It always has, it always will. We use it for leveling, spirit level, all this, to bubble. We use it in the bubble sextant to create horizontal. So if it works in the bubble sextant to create horizontal, what's a body of water at rest going to create? Curved surface? No, horizontal, the same thing. It's you just have to think and say, why are they programming me to take what I experience empirically through life by observation and make it seem like I live on something that contrasts it and can't work with it? And you have to realize it's a big lie. You see where I'm going with this?
You're on mute, by the way, Matthew. Go ahead.
In all fairness, that's a lot.
It does lead to something else. It always leads to another thing after you get past one of these formulas. It always leads to something else.
Right, but your own experience tells you otherwise. And at some point, we as human beings need to use our own logic, our own reason to say, oh, I'm glad you're telling me that. And I'm glad you have all these degrees behind your name. But that's not what I experienced in life, Mr. Professor at college, so-and-so. Please show me some evidence scientifically how you got to this. And they can't. That's why the question is scientifically. Has it gone through a method to prove the cause and effect? No. It has not.
Okay, you said you wanted to move on to a different subject, Matthew. As you've been so incredibly courteous, feel free.
Hey, thanks, man. Those are great points. Thanks for just reiterating that stuff, man.
Before you do, 1 second, shout
where
out to
we've
you.
gone next.
I'm really sorry to interrupt you straight away after handing the mic. Can anyone of the formula leading to curvature? Can anyone of that formulate? I can't read his. I can't make sense of what you're saying there, Unitox Femu. But thank you for the super chat. Can anyone of that?
I can read it.
Formulas leading to curvature. I don't really understand that. I'm sorry. We'll come back to that. Go ahead, Matthew. I'm sorry to cut you off. Thank you for the super chat, Sasha.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, you got to acknowledge those. Those guys are trying. So the thing that I was trying to go from into as a new thing, because we just hit me with this gravity thing. So thereby, how are they? I can get here on Earth. We can get by it, 8 meters per second, whatever. Maybe we can just not think about it. But how are they explaining orbit with the lack of that constant penetrable force?
Good question. I had John piping up. Go ahead, John.
When you talk about orbits, you'll need an apogee and a perigee to describe them. Do you know what those are?
Those are new words to me, but I guess they'd be like the center and the radius of something.
Well, they're the angle to a celestial object, right? And
okay.
if you're going to use an angle to a celestial object, you'll need a plane of reference. Plane of reference. Does that sound like standing on a curve or a plane of reference?
Well, that's definitely a plane, sir. I mean, all the good math had to start from something reliable. So everything's a plane, right?
Right. So the concept of orbits is a calculation derived from flat Earth angle measurements. That's a problem.
Or the ball, that
I
is.
see your point. Feel free to go on.
Well, that was kind of the conclusion.
All of it, everything that we're dealing with was all designed starting out with the preface of the actual measuring data, whatever they have, and that's all based off flat planes. So the geometry starts with a flat plane, surveying starts with a flat plane, everything starts with a flat plane.
Even the curvature calculator uses a flat plane differential to give you the concept of curvature.
To tell you how curved it should be. Curvature calculator tells you how curved the flat plane should be.
Keyword should.
Okay.
Okay, was that it? Are we all
Black
spent?
Swan.
Well, we got to say our famous saying: all roads lead to flat Earth. All roads, whether it's celestial navigation or whatever, it all leads to flat Earth. If it's Andrew Thomas Young saying all his refraction studies were from a plane, that means he never took it from a curved surface or a globe. He's admitting it.
Right. And this gentleman, Matthew, is just taken on a bunch of information and has had several questions put to him. I don't think it would be fair to start rapid firing questions at him. He's got a lot to take on board.
I don't have an issue with that. What is your position
No, I
anyway,
agree.
Matthew? You've been very cordial, which makes me think you're not a fundamentalist religious zealot ball believer, but you never know.
I was just going to say,
Sorry.
he's been the most polite guy I ever heard from the ball side.
Hey guys, thanks, Brad. I just had to pop off and come back because some kind of browser thing. But I heard everything.
What's your position?
Thanks. Try to be polite.
What is your position? Just out of interest.
Yes, sir. So position, I really feel like it's flat. We're coming from a flat situation, but my biggest problem isn't what I'm observing because it's never contradicted what I needed to hear with the way they phrased everything. Really clever guys put this together, so everything would match up whenever you went to check, like we're talking about gravity, right? But I have just seen too many holes in the people that do the space. Anybody that's doing space, they're not shooting straight. It's too much funds. They're not producing anything. There's no accountability, and then of course the fraudulent videos got me started on things. And for many years, that was enough for me to just say, I'm not going to trust them. I don't need what they've got. It's not going to change my perspective, and it's not like I'm going to really use anything that they're offering. But it did always bother me that people would come to my restaurant and have like a NASA shirt. I'd be like, you know what those guys are doing? Do you believe any of their bullshit, honestly? Do you do that at all? And that's where I came from, the whole direction. So I feel like people that have been receiving pats on the back to get up to the point of Neil deGrasse Tyson, and anybody that's been patted on the back in that situation, especially being a nerd, whenever you finally get something right and there's something that you do well, there's a strong feeling to protect that and to further this research and stand on the shoulders of giants. But as soon as we start poking holes in things, I think it's really hard for people to take a step back. So that's why I came on this thing, because I feel like I'm just missing the nuts and bolts that you guys are mentioning, because I don't have time to go and research what they said about gravity 107 years ago. That is absolutely jacked up. But on my perspective of things, though, they're changing education in Texas by making it 4-day weeks for the kids and all kinds of bullshit. So this is fundamentally stuff that I need to know, and I don't think it's. The worst part about this is I don't know how this is going to carry on to a public discussion because ethics, we can say the ethics of the college is not true anymore. Dylan Thomas was great, but his philosophy was flawed. We're not teaching ethics and believing ethics that's coming out of there. We're just passing the test and getting people jobs. But when it comes to physics, people really stop thinking and they say like, "Oh my God, this guy is contradicting mechanics and like gravity. So obviously he's not trying at all." But what I see, this guy's trying very hard. So that's the position I'm at.
Still didn't get your
Right.
position.
Remember,
What? So you're a glober that just doesn't quite accept that it's flat yet? Is that what you're saying?
I believe my
Do I make sense?
I believe my elders a lot more than I believe myself, and all the pilots and the people that have been places in the world that I talk to, they've told me like, look, man, when they teach you how to be a pilot, the book says it's flat. If you call up anybody right now that's going to be shooting a mortar, they say it's flat. They don't have time for the rest of it. And if you're going to be sending a missile across, well, how are you going to hit it if your mapping is flat? And so meeting with those people and talking to those guys, just having like, and then the airline stuff. The airline stuff is blowing me away. Just as somebody stopping to think about this. So yeah, I'm definitely on the flat side. I've been on the flat side probably since I was about 27 when I was taking chemistry in college. But that didn't have anything to do with where I was. It was really just I I believed what I believed at the point, and I looked at it and it looked that way. So whenever I looked up at the sky, that's just what I saw. And the ball stuff just didn't make sense. I looked right at the sky and I was like, this didn't look like what they're advertising it as, but I don't have any observation to tell me it's completely flat. I just am not believing it. And I know that's not a great argument to say, in this position. You don't want somebody that's just riding on beliefs. And that's the thing. I can't say that I can make up my mind about it. The math that we're getting into right now and the history of the science where people change the stuff is fascinating. But I'm going to have to sit down and do all that. Go ahead.
I just want to point out to you, I never asserted it was flat. Only you did that. And I pointed out why you say it's flat. I've not made a positive claim. I've only taken what you've said and explained to you why
That's
it
totally
must
right.
be that way. Right.
I come into this basically feeling like that's the structure that we're living with. And some of that is biblical belief because they've just in the Bible told us they're jacking with you, is all they're really telling us. You can't believe the Pharaoh. You can't believe a lot of things. And these guys right now, it's aliens and space race and all of this stuff that they're trying to throw at us. But
right.
there's
But what I'm saying though
culture,
is, you just stated you don't believe it's flat, but every example you gave was of it being flat. Do you see the contradiction?
Oh, okay, yeah. So my problem is I just don't want to be stuck in a place of nothing but belief. So I'd like to have more facts on it. And right now I'm just in that place.
You don't believe what you know to be true is the problem. You know it's flat. You keep describing it as such. You just don't believe that. That's what your problem is right now. You just need to think on it more.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just making sure that I wasn't putting words in your mouth about our discourse because that's where I came into it. I came into it on a flat plane as an educated gravity rationalist. I'm trying to rationalize gravity in my daily life.
But right, you're trying to rationalize this concept that was derived from a flat plane. Because remember, we use parallel, level, perpendicular to describe this thing that's not this thing anymore because they say it's not. But you know it's flat. You experience that all the time, but you just don't believe it. You are in what we call cognitive dissonance, and I think you can work through it. You just have to sit down and really think, what do you know?
Okay, that's pretty good to work with. I'll take it.
I'm still a bit confused. I thought you said you've been flat since you were 20. But maybe I just misheard.
Yeah. So I've kept it pretty far outside of frontal lobes, to be honest with you. I went through a lot of physics. I went through a lot of astronomy when I was a kid. It just got to a point in my about 25 or so when I was in college. I was like, you know what? All of these astronomy people seem to be just on something else. They are not using regular physics anymore. Everything is whippy wompy space time. And from my observations, as Tim was saying, I feel like it's flat. And I live there, and I talk to pilots, and I talk to people that used to work. Let's just, they're there. The guys that were in the air, guys that were on the sea, they say, don't even give time to that. So I didn't give time to it, and I honestly dug down a lot of different rabbit holes about people and behavior, and I let physics go for a while. So this is me just returning to physics probably after about that much time. That's why it seems like I don't have my feet under me, because I was
Okay,
just thinking. Go ahead.
so are you stating that you don't think it's flat, or you think it's flat now? I'm confused as well.
I think it's flat. I am pretty much convinced from my experience that's where we are. I just don't. I guess in my personal life, I haven't felt the need to shout that from the rooftops because I just don't see how anybody but the extremely far deluded are suffering from that.
Alrighty then.
Thank you for coming. This was a great dialogue back and forth.
The only thing I wanted to end with was, the fact about the scientific evidence to gravity. Obviously, that was the opener here. The thing I'll leave you with is, do you now appreciate that there is no scientific evidence of gravity?
Oh, I don't think appreciate is the right word for it. I'm a little bit upset about that. So I'm gonna dig around for it, and it's gonna take a whole paradigm shift for me to get around the water holding itself down and see where I go with that. But I'm glad to be where I am instead of where I was this morning.
You know that gravitas is weight, and they stole that name and made it an invisible force and said that mass attracts mass, which no one's ever seen. Isn't it clear that if you go to the root word and find out that it's weight, do things have weight? And does weight in mediums, depending what medium they're in, go up or down based on weight?
Okay, yeah, I guess the language is there, but that's another good point. You always see the word play. My thing with this though is that I don't think I ever really, was a strong believer towards, gravity. I don't think that's the point. It was just like, hey, we've got this issue going on. Let's try to explain it. and the ideal of infinitely permeable field energy that solar systems way over there are still acting on us a little bit. Just it seems so far-fetched. I thought most people just said, okay, well, let's focus on engines and what's important, and we'll get to that stuff when it really becomes important. So we use the same gravity equations, in aeronautics, but against mostly fluid pressure. So we're in a pressure system more than just free form, nothing but gravity. So I just didn't even use my brain for it for a long time. And the more I try to get into it, and like when I was researching to get into the Navy, that made sense. But whenever I look at just a lot of other examples of math on just the book level, like the college people, textbook level, I think, you guys are not going to have fun as engineers. So it's become almost two different ways of thinking. And now to just even think that the highest people up there have written down, no thanks, gravity. We need a different formula. Completely wrecks what I'm dealing with. That's a totally different category.
Matthew, if you realize in your research that they've created this whole heliocentric paradigm and it only exists in mathematics, but not in reality, would that make it easier for you?
I think an equation is an attempt for us to get to, through phenomenon and into a solution, like a prism or something. I'm fine with just, being where I am. But the idea is they keep telling a lot of people about space travel. They keep making a huge deal about it and allocating all these funds. And the people that I meet in the world are really often saying, like, hey, I'm so for space travel, screw this place. And they want to donate as much energy and life as they can to it. And it's all just farce. I feel like the programs have been farce from the begin with, and that's just such a huge allocation of people energy that getting in front of that and needing this information to get in front of that to stop those people from wasting so much energy, that's what's really going to make a difference.
Why do you think that's your burden to carry when you've already asserted the Bible? So I'm assuming you know the words of Jesus. This world is not my kingdom. My kingdom is from another place. And he said to the Father, I'm praying that you keep them in the world, but keep them safe from the world's evils. I'm going away when he left. But he told the disciples that they were going to stay in the world and that the world was full of lies and evil. So you're experiencing the same thing, that the world's full of lies, and you have truth because you've already said you believe in the Bible. So it's all going to play out the way it's going to play out. And you know why they're pushing aliens in outer space, because they don't want to give credit to creation to a creator.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Ezekiel 3:18. If you don't warn the wicked person, if you do warn the wicked person, they don't turn from their wickedness and evil ways, they'll die for their sin, but you will have saved yourself. It says many times, if you know better, it's not right to not tell somebody what's better. And I just want to be able to do that to not to just shout it from the rooftops or anything, but so that at least at the end of it, after they have all those degrees.
Join my team. We're starting a reformation. You're the perfect guy. Shout it from the rooftops.
Really nice, you guys.
And you know what? There's a great philosopher that once said, you must unlearn what you have learned. His name was Yoda.
What a terrible, terrible way to round out this show. But with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, however, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video. shout out to Isabella Live 2.0 says I rock, and also another shout out to Unitox Femu, who smashed the super chat and said there is no need for gravity in geometry. And then a little winky face and a little sighing face. So thank you very much, all of you, for hitting the super chat. Stay tuned if you're watching on an after show.